Well, as we just heard in this scripture that Lori just read, Luke tells us this really wonderful story of the time when Jesus was a child and Joseph and Mary took him to the temple in Jerusalem in order to be dedicated to the Lord as the Jewish law required them to do. And as they arrived, they made this offering of a poor family, either a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. And then, as we heard, as they got inside the temple, they were greeted by these 2 wise and wonderful senior citizens who blessed them and who were ones who had devoted their lives, Simeon and Anna, to worshiping God and to praying for the people of Israel. And both Simeon and Anna immediately saw in Jesus the fulfillment of their lifelong prayers and the evidence of God's salvation right before their very eyes. And so as a result, as you heard, they began to open their hearts in praise to God, and they began to talk about Jesus as though he was indeed the promised Messiah that they and everybody else in Israel had long awaited. It's one of the few stories, as you know, of Jesus as a child that we have, but it's one of a great many stories that we have of people seeing in Jesus the fulfillment of their prayers and the evidence of God's salvation right before their very eyes. I don't know about you, but it's not every day that I see the fulfillment of my prayers or the evidence of God's salvation in my life. Now, when it's all said and done, most of my prayers, I don't know what your prayers are like, but most of my prayers basically have to do with the world becoming a better place where everybody has everything they need to not only survive, but thrive in life. And obviously, there are plenty of days when I not only don't see the fulfillment of some of those prayers, but I actually see evidence of a whole lot of things working completely against them in an opposite direction. And yet one day, not too long ago actually, I did see some of the fulfillment of some of my prayers and the evidence of God's salvation right before my very eyes. It was for me one of the most powerful experiences I've really ever had. And it happened when Kim and I happened and managed to find a couple of hours, one Saturday afternoon back in the fall, just a couple of months ago, to go to Grove Fest, which is this street festival that takes place in the Grove neighborhood, I assume every fall. The streets are blocked off. You've been to these kinds of festivals. The streets were blocked off, and all the local shops and vendors had products for sale. There was plenty of food and beverage to buy as well, and people just mill around from place to place, taking in the sights and enjoying the open environment and one another's company. Well, Kim and I had been there for about an hour, and we had wondered if there might be some kind of live music at some point that afternoon. And sure enough, not too long after wondering about that, we could hear off in the distance the tinkering of an electric guitar and a keyboard. And so we made our way down the block to this stage area where there was indeed a band setting up and getting ready to perform on the stage. There were a few seats and tables and chairs, and because there wasn't a crowd yet at that time there, we were able to just sit down and enjoy the afternoon. Now, what I didn't know when we sat down was just 30 minutes later, basically, because I would become so moved and so touched, I would actually be sitting there with tears running down my face. As the clock ticked away, you see, it was like Ken and me had front row seats to God assembling what I was able to name as I was sitting there as this beautiful picture of heaven right before my very eyes. This is what happened. This really wonderful band began playing their music, which was this fusion of what I would call Caribbean, hip-hop, and folk. Maybe not your kind of music, but very distinctive and upbeat and positive. And of course, as people throughout the festival could hear the music playing, more and more of them started filing into the stage area that was just off of the main street. And as you might imagine, there were all kinds of different people there, right? Young and old, black and white and brown, of course, single and married, and young parents with children all over the place, multi-generational families with grandmas and grandpas, people with different abilities, and even people in wheelchairs. The color is what really caught my attention as people were dressed in so many different bright colors that day. But then finally, as this crowd of humanity, this broad swatch, if you will, of humanity gathered together, and as the band was playing their music, I don't know if you've ever seen these things or not, but there was this local radio station there who had a thing called a bubble bus. You know what that is? It's like this Volkswagen minibus, that is equipped with this gigantic bubble-making machine. And they started shooting out thousands and thousands. It was endless. It just went on and on and on for 15, 20, 30 minutes, shooting thousands and thousands of bubbles out. And people simply started playing and dancing and singing in that magical sea of these transparent circles that were floating around all over the place in the soft glow of that fall afternoon sun. It was sort of like looking at snowflakes in the winter as they were glistening. And the sheer and utter joy, I wish you could have all been there with us. The sheer and utter joy of the children's faces when they saw that magical sea of bubbles is a sight that I simply will never forget. But on top of that, you see, the free and uninhibited way in which all of these very different and totally unrelated people began singing and dancing and playing together in this magical sea of bubbles will be forever etched in my mind and heart as a really beautiful and small picture of heaven, and as a beautiful picture of what I think God dreams for us and for the world. In the space of that short half hour of time, God showed Ken and me, it was like we were in front row of seeing what God was giving to us. And it was just such an absolute wonderful blessing. You see, despite all of our failings and all of the failings in this world in which we live, God is still mysteriously working in very surprising ways. God is still breathing and speaking in and through the tense times that we live in and through the stresses of our society, which we're all very well aware of, in and through our struggles to make the world a better place. And people singing and dancing, being so unrelated and so different from one another in the middle of a St. Louis street, in the middle of the fall in 2018, was certain evidence of that to me. I wonder if we have eyes to see, what other evidence might lay in wait for us even as we leave this day from church, but certainly as we continue our journey in life? Both Simeon and Anna saw in Jesus the fulfillment of their prayers and the evidence of God's salvation right before their very eyes. Of course, we remember so many others who the stories of the Gospels did as well. We remember folks like Zacchaeus, or the Samaritan woman at the well, or Mary and Martha and Lazarus, or the Roman centurion. And there were so many more as well. And just like all of them, we too have seen the fulfillment of our prayers and the evidence of God's salvation in Jesus, in his whole life, ministry, death, and resurrection. And we see him in the Gospels always pointing away from himself, and not only toward God, but also toward all that God dreams for us and for the whole world. And we see him sacrificing everything in order to make God's dreams more of a reality. Simeon saw this already when Jesus was there in the temple on that day, as he told Mary that Jesus was destined for the falling and the rising of many, and to be a sign that would be opposed. Very simply this morning, may God always give us eyes to see the fulfillment of our prayers and the evidence of God's salvation in Jesus, to be sure. But may God also always give us eyes to see the fulfillment of our prayers and the evidence of God's salvation in the mysterious working of God's Holy Spirit in Christ that remains alive and well today, even in our daily lives, maybe